So after we launched the web server, we kind of need to understand what really went on. So we're gonna do a quick review of what we did and how it's set up, and kind of have more visualization of what really went on. So just a quick recap of what was done. We launched the server on the cloud on the AWS platform. When we launched it, we said, "Hey, please have ports 80 and port 22 available so we can access the machine via SSH or the web browser." And at that time, what we did was we grabbed the private key and we used the private key to SSH into the machine. Once we did that, we installed the Apache web server, and then we ran it after we installed it, and then we confirmed it when we went to the browser and we typed in the public IP address of that machine. Now, to get a quick visualization of what we did, we're going to check it real quick on this little diagram. So what's happening is that when you're reaching the internet, so say you're here, the little person, right? When you access the machine via the public IP address, you're saying, "Hey, I want to contact the machine," which is this cube right here. So when we're doing that, we are saying, "Hey, we want to reach whatever is running on this port." So for example, when we did the configuration, as far as we SSH to the machine and install the machine, we have to say, "Hey, I am running a service called SSH against the machine that it has SSH running, and I want to access the machine, and here's my private key." So essentially, what you're doing is you're reaching from the internet to the public IP address, and at that point, you're saying, "Hey, on the server, I want to reach port 22, which is this right here." And on port 22, the SSH service is running on it. And at that point, it will handle your request and says, "Hey, where is the private key?" And at that point, you provide the private key, and it says, "Okay, this matches with what we need to check on our end to go with the public key." And then you're granted access to the machine. So that was the first step as far as access to the machine. Now, as mentioned earlier, you want to have some kind of program or application running on the server in order for us to reach the server, the Apache server, what we saw earlier. But in order for us to do that, we had to first install the software, which was saying, "Hey, sudo yum install httpd," and installed it. The thing after that was, like, once you install it, we have to make sure, "Hey, let's run the application." You know, we installed it, but if you're not running it, then it just doesn't run at all. It's like you bought a car, we got the car, but then if you don't run it, then it's not going to be usable. So in this case, what we did was says, "Hey, we want to run Apache server, and by default, it's running on port 80." So, for example, when we said, "Hey, we're going to go on a web browser, we're going to go through the internet, we're going to reach the public IP address," and when we said, like, "Hey, port 80 or HTTP with the address," at that point it says, "Hey, when we get to this machine, go to port 80. There's something on it." So when it goes to port 80 on that machine, it will look at the server and says, "Hey, there's a web server running on here." So when that request comes into the server itself, it says, "Hey, I know what to do with this request. Here is the website," and will respond to you back to you. It says, "Hey, here's the website, and here you go." So in shorthand, what we did was access the machine via public IP address using SSH on port 22, and we established that, "Hey, I am authenticated to get into the machine." Then at that point, we installed the web server. We made sure it ran. After that, we went to the web browser and says, "Hey, we're going to the public IP address, for example, 8.8.8, and it automatically goes to the HTTP protocol, which is on port 80 by default on your web browser. And when you go to 8.8.8, the web server is gonna receive that request. "Hey, on port 80, here you go. Here's your website," and at that point, it will return back the website. So that's just kind of a quick overview of what we did, how we accessed the machine, what configuration we did, and why everything worked as far as the server running on port 80 and us able to access the web server running on port 80, and then us running a secure tunnel into the machine saying, "Hey, we're authenticated to go into the machine and make configurations." So that's just kind of a quick overview of kind of what we did on the back end part to get the server up and running.